Morning and welcome to my weekly livecast. I'm Jamie with Stillmeyer Games, and sorry I'm running a few minutes late. I tried at the last minute to cut a little bit of my hair because the gray is coming in strong. So let's see. Today is our monthly e-newsletter update. So I do these updates weekly, but today I sent out our monthly Stillmeyer Games e-newsletter, which you can see in the description of this video in case you didn't get it in your inbox. And feel free to sign up for it. If you go to our website, stillmeyergames.com, in the news section, you can sign up for that monthly e-newsletter. So I'll discuss a few of those topics today. I also have a bunch of random stuff, games I played lately, stuff that we're working on at Stonemeyer Games that I can reveal at this point, and some other things I will go into. I'll start off light as people are starting to join the conversation with some games that I played lately. Hey, Cynthia, thanks for joining me. Looks like Cynthia from Meeple Source is here. I played Dune Imperium again the other day. I played a four-player game. No, I played a three-player game a few weeks ago, and then played a four-player game this past weekend. I played Facilis again with Megan, two-player. My thoughts on that game are coming out soon on my YouTube channel. And last week at game night, we played Welcome to, and I can't remember the second game that we played, but the first game was Welcome to, and it works really, really well on Board Game Arena. Megan and I also played Arnak, Lost Ruins of Arnak two-player. Lost Ruins of Arnak was the last game that I played in 2020. The very last day, I got a game in with, what do we have, four players? Four total players. And it was a fantastic game. Definitely made my top 10 list of the year. And that happens to be one of the videos that I did recently, which is also linked in the newsletter. I did my top 10 video for 20 games I played for the first time in 2020 that were widely available in 2020. And this year there was a lot, surprisingly, quite a few great games despite the pandemic year. And I ended up dividing the list into sequels. So games like Mysterium Park is the sequel to Mysterium. I did a top 10 list for those sequels because there were quite a few sequels last year. And I did a list of top 10 completely new games. They're both on the same video on YouTube, and I had a lot of fun putting that together. A couple of the games that I just mentioned definitely made that list. A couple other videos I did recently. I did a video about my favorite mechanism in Southern Skies yesterday. And then my video, right after I played Lost Ruins of Arnak, I filmed a video for it and put that live on Friday. So that was live last Friday. So Happy New Year. People are joining us, wishing me Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too. Hopefully your 2021 has gone well so far. And hopefully it'll be, in many regards, a much better year than 2020. Because I know 2020 was a rough year for a lot of us. And in some ways, I imagine everyone had a bit of a rough year last year. I'm sure there's some good things, but it was just a rough year for the world, I think. So I really hope 2021 is better in a variety of different ways. And I hope this vaccination holds up. I'm really excited to be vaccinated. I don't know when my vaccination will be available, but I'm hoping it holds up against the various strains of the virus that seem to be developing. But I'm definitely getting it either way, and I hope you do too, so that we can be safe as a world and so that we can get together and play games together in person again. I miss that so much. I'm able to do that a little bit on a limited basis, but only with people kind of in a bubble, and we all still wear masks. In fact, today we're doing a play test. You can actually, I positioned the camera so you can't see what's on the table behind me there, but we are doing a play test of a new product that we're working on at Stonemeyer Games, and I'm doing that with my team at Stonemeyer Games. Everyone wearing masks today, this afternoon. Looks like Paul is joining us. Paul is the designer of Honeybuzz, and Paul and I just got to play disc golf yesterday. We went out and played an 18 basket round yesterday. Yeah, it was a fun day. Paul is a great disc golfer to play along with here in St. Louis. Arnaud is joining us from Madigo. Arnaud, yeah, thank you for joining me. I actually had the pleasure of playing with Arnaud a game called Reload the other day. Played it on, what did we play it on? Tabletop Simulator, and had a lot of fun playing that. That's a game that will be coming to Kickstarter soon from one of the companies that Arnaud works in conjunction with, Colossal. I believe that's right. Arnaud, correct me if I'm wrong about that. But it's kind of well, it's not Last Man Standing. It's a battle royale game, kind of like Hunger Games. Hunger Games, they put a bunch of people in an arena and they have to fight it out. Although Reload is not a Last Man Standing game, and I look forward to talking about that in my favorite game mechanism video about it because I had a lot of fun playing it. I think the designer did a really clever thing to have a battle royale game without the Last Man Standing element because I don't think that would work in a tabletop form. Whereas in digital form, you can just reload and play again. Ivan asked about information about the second expansion for Tapestry, which I have revealed. I have the e-newsletter here on my other screen, and I have revealed that we are working on a second expansion of Tapestry, and that is all the information that I've revealed so far, just that we are working on a second expansion for that. I will reveal more information about that much closer to the, when we announce that the name of that expansion and more information about it. I can say, unless something really bad goes wrong in the tail end of production and freight shipping, that I will be announcing a new game in next month's e-newsletter. So I'm really excited to talk about that. Until then, I won't say anything about it, but I look forward to that reveal in a few weeks now. Yeah, about 4 weeks. Chad says, has Dune Imperium gotten better, worse, or the same on a second play? Well, like I said, I played 3-player the first time, 4-player the second time, and I am loving it just as much. I don't want to, I guess, spoil where it was on my top 10 list for 2020, but I really love Dune Imperium. And I would say, I mean, I really, really loved it, and I love it just as much now that I've played it a second time. Let's see here. Steven says, how do I get a Stonemeyer game shirt? Steven, this is a shirt that we sell to our Stonemeyer ambassadors, and sell is a strong word. If an ambassador gets the shirt, buys the shirt, and actually wears it and sends us, wears it while like teaching our games, moderating our games, going to a convention wearing the shirt, we will refund them for the purchase of the shirt. But you have to be a Stonemeyer ambassador. So look on our website for more information about our ambassador program. They're essentially volunteers for Stonemeyer games. Let's see, Tommy says, howdy from Texas. Thursday night will be round 12 of Charterstone, the final game of Charterstone. He says his group wants to say thank you. Well, thank you so much, Tommy. I'm glad you all have played through it and enjoyed it. He says, since we loved it, is there another legacy game you would recommend? Fenris will happen later in the spring. So Fenris isn't a legacy game, but it does have kind of the feel of a legacy game because you are unlocking new content as you play through the Fenris campaign. This is the Rise of Fenris for Scythe. A legacy game is a game that features permanent changes that have a big impact on the game. And Charterstone is very much that. You're putting stickers on the board, you're naming things, there are lots of permanent things you're doing in the game that can't be undone, and the game is designed around that construct. If you really enjoy Charterstone, I would highly recommend The Rise of Queensdale, which is another village building legacy game. It only plays up to 4 players, but we had a lot of fun playing it in our group. Megan and I just finished Pandemic Legacy Season 0 and had a blast with it. Just 2 players, so if you're looking for a cooperative experience, you could do that. And if you're looking for something in between, Clank Legacy is a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun with Clank Legacy with 4 players. And while it is a competitive game, at times it also feels cooperative because there's a bit of some hybrid elements in that you are all competing against each other, but also competing against a third-party entity together. So yeah, those are 3 different options to consider for your next legacy game. I do need to update my top 10 list of legacy games because I have a list on my YouTube channel, but I've played more since then. Let's see. Chad says, any more updates, schedule updates for Gold? So Codename Gold is the game that I will be announcing in next month's e-newsletter. Steven says, have I been following the Sweet Mess Kickstarter mess? You know, I saw a post on Facebook about that the other day, and I read the project update from the creator, and I wouldn't say I've really been following it, but it was interesting to read. I didn't read it in too much detail because I was like, I don't really want to get involved in this controversy, but it didn't look great for the backers, although the creator did seem to emphasize that they will still be making the game and delivering it to backers, and so as long as they do the right thing and give backers what they paid for, that seems fine, even if it takes longer than normal. I'm sure there's much more depth to it than that, Stephen. So if there's something I want to highlight in the comments here, let me know. I'm happy to consider commenting on it, although like I said, I don't want to delve too deep into a controversy that I know very little about. Carlos says, Carlos also asked, will I reveal Codename Gold in next month's e-newsletter? And yes, I will indeed. In fact, let me talk about this month's e-newsletter a little bit. Let me go down and highlight a few of the things here. I mentioned a shipping update in this e-newsletter. In that it was kind of an odd shipping season in that a few huge containers of products, including the restock of Wingspan and the Scythe hardcover rulebook, were stuck at port in San Francisco, I think. somewhere on the west coast of the U.S. for a lot longer than they usually are. Usually they're in port for like a couple days and they move on to Chicago by truck or train and then St. Louis. But they were stuck there for weeks. And so they have finally been released, and one of those is heading to St. Louis right now, the one with Wingspan and the Scythe hardcover rulebook. So those will start to be shipped if you are in the U.S. waiting for those products very soon. If you're not in the U.S., you might have already had this product shipped. I'm not sure about the exact freight shipping status for our other fulfillment centers in the U.K., Canada, and Australia. So we're working on that. Also, the e-newsletter hopefully reassures everyone in Europe that we are using DDP, which is duties, delivery duty paid or prepaid for shipments from the UK to Europe from now on. So it means that basically nothing will change for you, even though Brexit is happening, if you order something from the Stonemeyer Games web store. Instead of you paying the duties that might be incurred now that the UK is not in the EU, we will pay them up front. So everything will be the same from your end. One of the other big updates in the e-newsletter is actually not a Stonemeyer Games update, but it's something that I wanted to share because I'm so excited for Wingspan artists Natalia and Anna, and Elizabeth too. Elizabeth contributed to this, which is that they have a book coming out using all the art that we commissioned for Wingspan in a book from a major publisher, HarperCollins. And so it's called Celebrating Birds. And it's a book that showcases all of the art from, I believe, North America. Yeah, I think the first book, there might be multiple books. I think the first book is the Birds from North America. Will be featured in this book with little stories about, from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, stories about each of those birds. I think Elizabeth contributed with some design notes. Even though it's not, again, a Wingspan game book, it is a book about the birds that we commissioned for Wingspan. And so Elizabeth did chime in, I think, with a few thoughts there in the book. And you can see, I'm looking at my second monitor here, looking at the cover. It's a beautiful cover. And I'm so excited for Natalia and Anna that they've had opportunities from this based on all the hard work and many, many hours that they put into the Wingspan art, because they spend, I think, at minimum, like 10 hours on a single illustration for a bird in Wingspan, which is truly incredible. So I'm so excited for them. And if you are curious to check out this book, again, it's not a Stonemeyer Games product. It is something from HarperCollins, but it's something that I'm excited to share with you because of Natalia and Anna's and Elizabeth's involvement in it. So you can see that in our e-newsletter if you want to check that out. A few other little things in the e-newsletter. Last week I posted a year in review post from Stonemeyer Games, featuring the kind of the highs and lows from the last year from our company. You can check out that blog post on our website, as well as the top 10 games of 2020 video that I mentioned a second ago. We also have our demographic survey results. I kind of highlighted 5 things that were distinctly unusual or interesting or different from last year in our demographic survey that many of you filled out last month. Thank you so much for filling that out. There's an article about that. And let's see. Oh, it looks like I accidentally left something from the last e-newsletter, the gift guide. Scythe Digital. Oh, in fact, I might have forgotten to add this, but Wingspan is now available on Switch. I think I actually left that out of the e-newsletter. But yeah, Wingspan is available on Switch now, Nintendo Switch, in case you've been waiting for that. I need to make a note about that, because I had the note about Charterstone on Switch, but I failed to put Wingspan on Switch. There's a note from me next month. All right, let me jump back to your questions real quick, and then I have a lot of topics to cover today, so I'll jump back and forth a lot, I think. Let's see. Team Hotep says that he played Facilis and really enjoyed it, and also played Red Cathedral and Orleans, which we loved and highly recommend. I haven't played Red Cathedral, but I do love Orleans. Bit of an older game there that I really love. Michael says that he's looking for a Stonemeyer shirt in a tall size option. Mike, I'm not sure if that's available in the type of shirt material that we use, but we'll look into it, and I appreciate that feedback. James says, how are the cats? No cats in here right now. Walter today is infatuated with a feather bird toy that he's been sleeping on all day, and Biddy, I think, is probably sleeping on the bed, but they're both doing well, and I appreciate you asking that. And I should mention the chocolate of the day. Before I forget, I have some fancy chocolates that were given to me at Christmas. These are Catherine Ann confections. I've never had these truffles before, but so far what I've had from this little sampler, they're really delicious. Here are what they look like in the box. So what is your indulgence of the day? What's your chocolate treat of the day, or other treat if you're not into chocolate? Runar asked a specific question about one of our codename games, and as usual, I reveal codenames for our games to kind of hint at what they could be, what they might be, but I don't talk about the specifics of those games at all until we actually announce the game. So I appreciate your curiosity, but I don't actually talk about that. Tim says, were there any champion t-shirts left over? I overlooked the email last year. He rocked his Wingspan shirt last night, probably his Wingspan shirt from MeepleSource. We don't make Wingspan shirts. Tim, that's a tough question to answer live while I'm not looking at inventory, but you're welcome to contact Joe at contact@stomeyergames.com and let him know your size and that you are a champion, and he can look in to see if there are any extras left over in your size. Jamie says, you mentioned you were playtesting a new Stonemeyer product. Is there a reason you didn't say game? The reason I didn't say game is that it could be a game, it could be an expansion. I don't want to give that part away. But yeah, it's either a game or expansion whenever I talk about a product from Stomar Games. Although we do have accessories, but we usually don't have to playtest accessories. I did get, I can't talk about it yet, or I won't talk about it yet, but I did get a sample component for an upcoming game that we're working on, and the component looks beautiful. I was so excited. It took a while for us to get this component right, and I'm so happy with how it finally turned out. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you later this year. Jeremy says, is there any update on the Scythe rulebook? Depends on which version you're talking about, Jeremy. I mentioned a little bit earlier, a few minutes ago, that the hardcover version of the rulebook finally is on its way to St. Louis after being stuck in port for most of December, and it is headed to our U.S. fulfillment center now. If you're not in the U.S., I think it's either already at fulfillment centers or should be there very, very soon. I will check on that when I get off this call. I'll make a note about that. Hardcover at non-U.S. If you're talking about that one, so yeah, that should be shipped. I think they'll start to be shipped next week if everything goes well in the final stages of freight shipping. As for the Spiral-bound rulebook, we had to reprint some elements of it involving Automa. So anyone who wants kind of the proper Automa rules or the full Automa rules for solo play and the Spiral-bound Scythe complete rulebook, you probably already submitted your information. This is if you've already bought the Spiral-bound rulebook, the original one. We have a reprint coming, I believe, in January or February that we'll be sending to anyone who requested a replacement for their original, if they do use solo play. And we'll have some extras left over to sell more versions of the Spiral-bound version of the rulebook as well at that point, after we complete the fulfillment to the original customers. Cynthia says, have you seen Darwin's Journey on Kickstarter? We played online during development and really loved it. The collector's edition looks gorgeous. Cynthia, you may need to follow me on Kickstarter because you'll see that I did back it within minutes of it launching yesterday. It does look beautiful. I'm super excited about it. It's from our friends at Thundergriff Games. You're friends with Gon as well. And it looks amazing. So I'm really excited about that. Hopefully it's not too heavy for me, but it looks kind of like a solid medium weight game, maybe verging a little bit on the heavy side. But Thundergriff does a great job of creating an intuitive user interface, and so I think that'll work really well for me. But yeah, that's on Kickstarter now. I'm really excited to get that. Let's see. Joshua, so I'm seeing some questions here about games that we're playtesting that I've hinted at code names, and I love your curiosity, but I don't answer questions about that stuff. You'll know the answers to those questions when I announce those products, if I do announce them, because I think sometimes there's some speculation about games that we might be releasing, and keep in mind that it's just speculation. I don't want to get your hopes up about some rumor that you saw about a trademark or someone said something on a live cast that you think is actually true, or not me, but someone says something in the comments. So please be careful about that. That if it is speculation, if it isn't something that I've actually said, don't say it as if it's something actually happening, because that's going to confuse people in the long run, especially if it's completely false. Sometimes there's like hints of reality at those clues and those speculations, but just trust me, I'm going to tell you about something when I'm ready to tell you about it. But in the meantime, I do appreciate your curiosity. Let's see. Danny says, is Viticulture in Tuscany out of stock? It's really hard to get a copy in Romania. It's hard to say on the retailer level. We pretty much constantly print Viticulture in Tuscany. We try to keep it in circulation with distributors and retailers worldwide. Currently, I know on our web store, we happen to be out of Tuscany. We're waiting for a restock because sometimes products sell a little faster than we hoped. And so Tuscany sold very well over the holidays, and we sold out, I think, a month before we anticipated. So At least on our web store level, Tuscany is out of stock. I don't think Viticulture is out of stock on our web store though. And on a distributor retailer level, it's a lot harder to tell. It depends on, like, I don't know the inventory levels for any retailer or distributor. Um, so it's possible. If we're out of stock of something, it's likely that they probably are too. But we're always making more. So should be back in stock soon. Jamie says, did I feel Pandemic Legacy Season 0 would have been more fun with more people, that you missed out a little bit by playing with just two players? Actually, no, I'm really, really happy that we just played with two players because it gave us a lot of freedom in terms of when we wanted to play more than one game in a row versus when we wanted to just play one game and stop. We didn't have to kind of take into account the feelings of the greater group. And as for the play experience, I actually enjoyed it a lot more too because like half of the time that you spend in any Pandemic Legacy happens during setup and cleanup when you're making important decisions. And with more people talking about those decisions, about what will be permanent, what won't be permanent, and even talking about the strategy during the game, the much longer the game can become. And so I really liked the much more streamlined play with just two players, with just Megan and I making those decisions and respecting each other's preferences as we were playing the game, and our collaboration. That worked much better. I would actually recommend Pandemic Legacy with two players over any other player count. Edgar says, any tips for designing a board game? That's a huge question, Edgar. I would say the starting point would be to, and I think you've probably already done this, but I'm going to say it anyway, is go to our website and go to StomeyerGames.com and go to how to design a tabletop game. Because the first few articles and videos in that section are things that are kind of palatable. They're easy things to start out with, to consume and consider as you start that process. So start there. I know it's a lot to start, but to do, but just start small and start with those baby steps and see how it goes. I'm going to keep going with questions for a minute. Let me see if I have anything really important to discuss. I don't think I have anything huge to discuss today, and I've already covered a lot of it. But yeah, I'll keep going with questions, and I'll come back to my topics in a minute because I don't want to miss any of these great questions. Let's see. James says, will you be bringing out any more legacy style games like Charterstone? Charterstone was a beast to design. I mean, I would say it was more difficult to design than anything else I've ever designed because of those legacy elements and how I really wanted players to unlock things in very different orders from game to game and from group to group. And so I am not currently working on any more legacy games. Both from a design perspective, a production perspective, it's not something that I'm currently pursuing. But I'm also not saying that we'll never do it again. I am open to publishing the right legacy game in the future if it happens, if it feels right for Stonemeyer Games. Kai says, "Hey Kai, good to, if Kai is the designer of the Wind Gambit or my co-designer for the Wind Gambit." He says, "Can we expect a Charterstone expansion?" And no, Kai, I don't think we will do a Charterstone expansion. I like having, sometimes it's good, instead of having a movie trilogy, sometimes it's good just to have a standalone movie that you have everything there in that one box. And that's the case with Charterstone. You can play through the 12 game campaign, and then you can continue to replay the game using the village that you've created after that as much as you want. However, there is the wonderful digital version from Akram Digital. And I have told Akram that they are welcome to try new things with it. And not necessarily expansion content, but to give players new challenges, new objectives, new achievements, things like that. I might be involved in those in some ways as a designer, but I think the future of Charterstone, if you want to continue to play it, will be on the digital version of the game. Yeah. Let's see. Cody says, do you anticipate the Chinese New Year impacting the Stonemeyer products in the next few months? Well, yes and no. Yes, in that it always impacts our production schedule, the Chinese New Year does, but no, because we always plan around it. It's not a surprise that the Chinese New Year is coming up on, I believe, February 12th or 13th, and that it'll last 3 or 4 weeks. We always know about it. We plan around it. So it will not be a surprise impact on anything. It's just something that we plan around every year. Yeah. The only surprise happened actually last year because the Chinese New Year was greatly extended due to China's lockdown to try to halt the spread of the coronavirus in China. But hopefully that won't happen again this year. Steven says, he's talking about the Sweet Mess Kickstarter controversy. He says he backed a different game with the same CEO that is long overdue, so I'm following it closely. Interesting. What's the other game, Steven? So it sounds like maybe the creator made one game and didn't fulfill that one, and now he launched another game and backers backed that one, perhaps not even knowing that it was related to the game that hadn't been delivered yet, and he's now saying that that game may or may not be delivered. I think that's the gist of it that I understood from the update. Diego says, is there any place I could order a Spanish version of the Oceania expansion? And yes, you can do that from Maldito Games. Maldito is our partner in Spain. Yeah. Jeremy says, a while ago you were working on a farming Stardew Valley type of game. Any movement there? Yeah, this is where I go back to speculation, Jeremy. I never actually worked on a farming Stardew Valley game. I did talk about Stardew Valley on my channel because I enjoy Stardew Valley, although I haven't played it much since the original few plays of it. But no, I've never been designing a game related to Stardew Valley or farming. We do have a game, Viticulture, my first published design, that does have farming elements to it. But yeah, no, nothing on Stardew Valley. A friend did send me a Reddit link the other day from someone who did make a Stardew Valley board game for, I think, him and his girlfriend, just something for fun, not a real IP or anything like that. And it actually looked pretty cool, based on the single photo I saw on Reddit. Oh, Natalia is here. Natalia, one of the artists of Wingspan, chimed in and said, the book happened thanks to you for believing in our talent and commissioned us to do all those birds. Thank you for your amazing support. Well, thank you, Natalia. I appreciate you saying that. But really, Wingspan would not be what it is without the amazing art that you and Anna created for it. I know how much time and effort and detail and talent you put into every one of those birds. And I'm glad those birds can be experienced by people in ways beyond just the game. Because I know the illustrations you create are so big for those birds, but on the cards they end up pretty small. And so I love that they're going to be in this book. I love that you sell prints and even the originals of the artwork for Wingspan. So if you have a favorite bird in Wingspan, feel free to check out Natalia and Anna's website. Although I'm not sure, Natalia, you got really busy last month, and I think you maybe stopped accepting orders for a little while. I don't know if that's changed since then, but feel free to let people know in the comments if your store is open for people to buy prints from you of the amazing birds at Wingspan. Casey, sorry, not Casey. Corey says, have I played Parks from Keymaster Games? I have, and yes, it is a beautiful, you speak about the storage solution. It is a great storage solution. And yeah, I have played it. I have a video about Parks. Beautiful game. I really like how it all fits together so well into that container. He would say, can you provide any information from a publisher standpoint on why more board games in general don't include decent storage solutions? A couple things there quickly. One is that not every game needs a fancy storage solution to make setup and cleanup easy. And the thing that you lose when you add that is often a lot of cost. It's fairly expensive to add those nice trays and to make the box big enough to hold the trays. Although the Parks box is very small, I think, for a board game. I think they do a good job of fitting a lot into a tight box. The main downside that you have to consider when you're doing a storage solution is expansions. Because fans of games are often fairly adamant that expansions, hypothetical expansions that haven't been designed yet, will fit into the original insert. And so that's really tough to design around, especially when you're trying to have things fit so well into the box and fit sleeved cards, fit premium components in addition to the components included with the game, things like that. So those are all things that you have to think about with the insert. In fact, we ran into this with My Little Scythe. We made My Little Scythe, and we made an insert that we kind of intended. We had some open slots for expansions, and we left room for expansions. And even then, we had to design the airship in the My Little Scythe expansion around the idea that it had to break in half just to fit into the insert. So that is a huge thing for publishers to consider. And I do want to say, Corey, I had a friend mention this to me the other day, that someone posted a comment on Board Game Geek saying something like, why does this company hate their fans because they didn't include a fancy insert in their game? And sometimes I was really kind of burned by that comment. It wasn't about Stonemeyer Games, it was about another company, because obviously this company doesn't hate their fans. They want to service their fans. But when you add an insert, when you add a fancy insert, you take away that expansion potential often, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, and you add cost to the game, making the price higher for everyone. So you have to think about fans both ways. Do we want to offer a lower price, or do we want to offer a fancy insert? Those are just some considerations. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer there, but by default, not including a fancy insert isn't necessarily worse for fans of the game. And sometimes it can be worse. Joe says, how many games would you say you acquire in a year, purchased or given? The vast majority of games I attain are games that I purchase, that I buy. Very few games are given to me. Um, maybe 50, maybe 50 games a year. That seems about right. Maybe around that amount. I would say this past year that included some digital purchases, but mostly tabletop cardboard games. Zachary asked about a Wingspan box or organizer. Yeah, I must have missed a question or comment about that. Yeah, we are working on a Wingspan Legendary Box, basically a big empty box with an organizer in it for you to put all your current and future Wingspan components in this box. We're working on it. We have a rough prototype, I think, in the works right now. And so sometime later this month in the Wingspan Facebook group, I will share photos of the initial prototype and get your feedback on it. This is based on a lot of feedback that I got from those of you in the Wingspan group who commented on my original post about this a few months ago. We've been working on it quite a bit, and I look forward to showing some photos and maybe a video of the initial prototype, just the first prototype, with you in a few weeks. If it stays on schedule. I really don't know exactly when we'll get it. Tim mentioned that there's a Castles of Mad King Ludwig deluxe version coming out from Bezier Games in a few weeks, or at least on Kickstarter in a few weeks, and I'm really excited about that. Castles of Mad King Ludwig is one of my favorite games that I don't actually own, and so I am excited to get this fancy version of it. And it looks like, I would say one of my only shortcomings about the original Castles of Mad King Ludwig is some of the art, well, some of the art I don't think is as nice as the art that we put in between two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. And it looks like in the deluxe version, they have really upped their game on art and design, graphic design. So I'm really excited to see what they do with that. Let's see. Leon says he found this and really loved the idea of a Pokemon game based on Wingspan. I know it's hard to make due to the licensing, but I still really like the idea. I will check this out after my live cast here, Leon. But thanks for sharing that. Oh, Gonzalo is here from Thunder Gift Games and Darwin's Journey. He says, thank you for backing Darwin's Journey. My pleasure. I'm just super excited to play it. And he says, by the way, have you ever tried Butler's Chocolates? I don't think I have tried Butler's Chocolates. Um, not that I can recall. What would you recommend for them? Maybe I could check out some of their chocolate. It sounds like a fancy chocolate company. I love to try various fancy chocolates, especially like dark chocolate truffles. That's like the sweet spot for me for a fancy chocolate. Let's see. Kurt says, this is a rules question. I'll do my best on this, Kurt. He says the pink abilities activate on someone else's turn. So if I have a bird with a pink ability, yes, it activates on someone else's turn. Um, Rules state that they reset on your turn. However, a rule clarification from Elizabeth I found states the intent is once around the table to be fair. We typically play with 6 people in it and an extra board, then having it reset 2 players later maybe is an unfair advantage. Um, yeah, I mean, so if I have a pink bird, when it's other players' turns, so if we're playing a 4-player game, as player B, C, and D take their turns, if one of them activates the trigger on my pink bird, uh, I get to take that ability. But if it's player B that activates that ability, even if player C or D does, I don't get it. I only get it once between my turns because it doesn't scale well for higher player counts. Because in higher player counts, all the players could activate that ability. It would be way overpowered in those games. Um, so I would say no matter the player count, I think the way that we have it now, even if you add that 6th player, um, it works as intended because your number of turns stays the same. I think the only thing with more players is that there's a greater chance that someone will activate it opposed to a 2-player game or a 3-player game where you have fewer players who could potentially activate it. But even in a 6-player game, I would only have it activate once and have it reset when it gets back to my turn, as in the rules of the game. Let's see. I'll jump back to my topics real quick, then I'll go to questions. Um, Josh asked, someone who can't attend today's live cast asked me about my sit stand desk. So I have an uplift sit stand desk. You can see, well, I won't do it because I might mess it up. Oh, we have a Walter down here. You want to say hi? Here's Walter. So I have a sit stand desk from Uplift. I have a pretty big one because I have a lot of stuff on my desk. Walter isn't liking this. Do you want to get down, bud? Let me get down. Um, and I really enjoy it. So Josh asked if I had any tips about it, and I would say a few things. So um, if you have a sit-stand desk, don't feel any pressure to stand up or sit down any less or more than you already do. I think do what feels comfortable to you. So I often will sit for a few hours maybe, and then I will stand for an hour. I'll just mix it up based on how I feel. I do have a pad. Here's the pad that I use. What is this called? Standdeco.com makes this pad, and that really helps me stand at the desk for long periods of time. I also have a weird chair that I use to sit at the desk that I got from Uplift. It's very heavy, but it looks like this, and so I don't have a chair that I can lean back on. I'm always kind of using my core when I'm sitting at my desk, and I like that a lot. Uh, I think those are the main two things. Getting the pad helps out a lot, and getting that chair. Oh, also, if you are thinking about getting a sit stand desk, I would highly recommend that you get one that has uh, preset heights rather than because you'll find your sweet spot for like how tall you want to be on how tall you want the desk to be when you stand or sit on different chairs, and to have to adjust the up and down arrows every time you do that. It's well worth the money to spend the extra $50 or whatever it is to get the programmable timer, or not timer, but setting. So you can just press one and it goes to a setting that you really want, or goes up to, you press four and it goes up to the highest setting, things like that. Highly recommend getting that. Yeah, those are my thoughts on it. What other topics do I have here? So stuff that I've been up to at Stomar Games. We have the prototype. Have been playtesting a prototype quite a bit, and I'm looking forward to playing it with my team today. And then we've had two playtests recently finished, blind playtests recently finished, and I've been analyzing that data and figuring out what to do with those playtest results. So that's always fun. Um, I talked about I revealed the results of a digital tabletop game survey on Monday's blog post. And just a fun little thing, my 7-year-old niece contacted me the other day, and she said she wanted to have a little book club with me, her uncle. And so she sent me this book, and said that every couple nights we're going to get together on FaceTime and discuss a few chapters. So we're both going to read a few chapters in this book separately and discuss them over FaceTime. And I just thought that was the sweetest, most adorable thing. And I love that she's excited about reading and about sharing her thoughts on this book with her uncle. So that kind of meant the world to me that she did that. And I really like the idea of it. So if you have a niece or nephew who is getting into reading, seems like it's a pretty neat way to connect with them for a few minutes every couple days, to see what they think about what the characters are doing in the books, and their thoughts on what's happening. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. And I just thought it was really neat that my niece would think of that. Completely her idea. Chad says, new Stonemeyer Games t-shirt idea. It simply says, speculate responsibly. I like that. That's great. Let's see. Uh, Kurt says, this is a house rule. My brothers and family playing gets mad as the rules say reset on turn and walks away angry to the point no more games are played. Well, that sounds like someone who's not very fun to play with. George says, George is talking about our project manager at Panda, Shannon, who is wonderful to work with. And he says he participated this week at another Ask a Panda Manager session. And the guest speaker was the guest speaker was Shannon, talking about project timelines. Is that available online anywhere, George? So I could share that, because Shannon is really great to work with. I think he might only work with Stonemeyer Games at this point, because we make a lot of stuff with Panda. But he is wonderful to work with, and Panda, I think, does a great job picking the right people for their company. Panda, I didn't say this, Panda is the manufacturer that we work with. It's a Canadian company with their main factory in China. Okay, Mike, thanks for clarifying that Sweet Mess and Onimaru have the same CEO. Interesting. Onimaru. I don't remember seeing that on Kickstarter. And Steven shares it there too. He says the person is involved with, or also Montana is involved too, and Manchukuo. Whoa, a lot of games from the same person. That seems somewhat misleading to do that, to have multiple projects from different companies, but actually run by the same person. And I'm guessing that most of those games haven't been delivered. Has Montana, though? I thought Montana had actually been delivered, but I could be wrong about that. Oh, nope. Steven says none have been delivered and progress reports are infrequent. Sounds like Kickstarter really needs to be aware of that, and hopefully Kickstarter is aware of that now so that they can put a halt on that creator making new projects. Chad says, based on the worlds in Stonemeyer games, which would you like to live in, visit, and never go to? I'd like to live in. Tuscany sounds pretty nice. Uh, I'd like to visit the worlds of like Scythe and Euphoria, but only visit to see them. In fact, Euphoria I may not want to go to. In Green Gully, I think I would also like to live in, but I don't know about. Oh, and live in I would live in a castle for sure. I would love to live in like a between two castle. But as for never go, I don't know if there's one that I'd never go to. I'd be okay with briefly visiting the worlds of Euphoria and Scythe. And if I had to pick one to never go to, it would probably be Euphoria because it is a dystopia. Let's see. Natalia confirmed that her store for prints of a bird art from Wingspan is currently closed, but the original artwork is available on her store and Anna's web store. So I think maybe they were getting too many orders for prints. They had to focus on some other projects like the Wingspan book, Celebrating Birds. Um, but perhaps in the future, those stores will be open again. And I'm guessing, Natalia, that you have maybe an e-newsletter on your web store that people can sign up for to get more information about that when it's open again. So feel free to sign up for that there if you are looking for a print of one of their birds. Mike says, have I considered selling the final expansion with the Legendary Box or storage solution? Uh, this is for Wingspan. It's a good question, but my conclusion when I first put away Wingspan Ocean. So originally the plan for the Wingspan Legendary Box was to wait until all expansions had been designed because only then could we guarantee like 100% that everything could actually fit into the box. But when I first put away Wingspan Oceania and European and the core game in my box and couldn't do it, I was like, okay, we have to start working on this now, and we just have to plan ahead for the future and make it modular and make the box big enough that we really can fit anything else that we want to put into this game. So basically, the answer is we can't wait that long. I mean, it's going to be years before the final expansion is released, and I think the storage solution is needed on a much more immediate basis. So, yeah, so we need it more urgently, I think. Uh, yeah, that did remind me of a completely unrelated thing as I'm talking that I'm going to make a note of. Let's see. John says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you too, John. Another John says, what are my favorite end game triggers? Do you like a certain point value ending the game, or do you prefer a trigger like Scythe where the game ends but you can still tabulate the score? I do have a video about this. If you look on my YouTube channel for, I think, endgame conditions or endgame triggers, I have a video about a lot of games that do some creative things. I'm going to totally forget what those games are as I answer this question. But I would say I do like the Scythe method, opposed to slightly over the Viticulture method or the Euphoria method. Scythe kind of combines those two into a hybrid method. In Scythe, when any player has 6 stars, the game ends, and then you calculate your score based on a few other different factors. Let's see. He mentions Moonrakers and Twilight Imperium. I haven't played Moonrakers. I've only played Twilight Imperium once. I can't remember the endgame trigger for Twilight Imperium, so I don't know. But check out the video about endgame conditions or endgame triggers on my YouTube channel. Julia has a question about, she says she got Viticulture in Tuscany and the Moors and Rhine expansions for Christmas. So pretty much all Viticulture stuff except for the metal coins. Let's see. Julia says there were some talk on Facebook about 2 other expansions. Arboriculture and Formaggio, I think, are the 2 that you're thinking of. So these were modules that we created in the original Kickstarter for Tuscany that are now just available from Print and Play Productions. So it's a pretty nice version of them that you can get. You can also print them off our website. But we didn't deem them essential. I wouldn't even necessarily recommend playing with them. I think Tuscany has all the essential stuff as well as those other mini expansions. But if you go to our website, you can see there's a link to where you can get those expansions. It's on our website, I believe on the Tuscany page, maybe on the Viticulture page. If not, I will double check and let's see if it is on the Viticulture page. I'll pull it up real quick. So Viticulture, go to the Viticulture page on our website. Viticulture expansions. Yeah, you can see it if you go to the Viticulture page on our website and you scroll down. It's at the bottom of the page. It says metal coins and a link to arboriculture and formaggio there. You can check those out. But you do have all the stuff you need, Julia. I would say if you are looking for a complete viticulture collection, you have it right now. I wouldn't worry about those other expansions or those other modules because they really are secondary. We don't deem them essential enough to actually reprint them. But we get enough requests from people that they wanted it, perhaps just out of curiosity. I don't know if people even play them, that we did partner with Print and Play Productions to allow them to make it on a print-on-demand basis. Christopher says, what digital version of Stonemeyer games do you enjoy the most and why? Do you have a personal preference for platform, game consoles, Tabletop, Board Game Arena, etc.? So actually, I play very little of the Stonemeyer digital games. While I love our games, and I probably need to find a way to do that, maybe just to play with fans of those games on a semi-regular basis. I'm more focused on the future, I think, than playing games from that we've published in the past. So I play very little of them. It's hard for me to speak to that first question. As for personal preference for platform, I have really enjoyed Board Game Arena as a replacement during these times when it's tough to meet with friends in person, because it's greatly my preference to play games with my friends instead of against an AI. And so Board Game Arena is fantastic for that. At the same time, there are occasionally games that I just want to sit down and play for a few minutes, just want to relax, like Shards of Infinity. I love just playing that. And when I do want to just play a full AI digital game like that, I like to do it on my computer. So I use Steam on a PC to do that. Let's see. Julia says she really appreciated how the Wingspan box had the organization suggestion printed on the side of the lower box. That was brilliant. Well, thank you. Yeah, I think we do that for a couple of our games. My Little Scythe, Wingspan. We can't always do it based on how late in the process we figure out that organization, but it's on Tapestry too. It's on the Tapestry side of the box. But I love to do that when we're able to do it. Tyler says he just upgraded yesterday to the metal mechs for Scythe. That's awesome. Any potential for metal characters? Tyler, I appreciate you asking that, but no, we're just doing the metal mechs for Scythe. They're so expensive to make and so expensive to sell to you that I think we are just going to limit it to the mechs. And plus, it makes the most sense for mechs. Mechs are metal in real life. If mechs existed, people are not metal in real life. People have asked if we'll do the airships, but again, they would be so expensive, and the airships are so much bigger than the mechs that it would probably cost 2 or 3 times the cost of the wind gamut itself just to make metal versions of the airships. So I don't think we'll be doing that. And plus, there's the stability. The airships are up on a rod, so they're above the table. It could really damage your board if one of those toppled over and landed on the table. So we don't want to damage your board with a heavy airship landing on it. Woody says, is Pendulum coming to digital for iOS? I think it would play well with the timers. That's a good question, Woody. There is a developer, actually the brother of the designer of Pendulum, I think is working on a potential digital version, but I don't think he needs to deal with a distributor, and he doesn't have that deal yet. So we're working on that, but there's nothing fully in the works yet that I can say, yes, there will be a digital version of Pendulum. Aaron says, 3D printing is becoming much more common. I think it was you who put out a survey earlier about the potential of board games with 3D printable pieces. What were the results of that survey? Would you consider designing official 3D printable inserts as a cost-saving mechanism, or to otherwise mitigate the downsides of custom inserts that you discussed earlier? For your second question, it's something that I'm happy for fans to do. I don't think it's something that we would design officially, spend a lot of time on, but I love fans creating cool stuff for our games. And so I think there's lots of fan versions of inserts for our games, and I think that will continue to be the case in the future. As for the survey, yes, I remember that. Let me see if I can find the actual link. I'm trying to remember how I posted about it in the survey. But I know the results. The results were almost no one said that they would want a game to require them to 3D print pieces. And so there were very, very few people who said they actually have 3D printers, and very, very few people who said that they would want to have to use their 3D printer to make pieces for game. Let me see if I can find that. I'll search for 3D printer on our website. 3D print. Okay, 3 polls. Okay, here we go. So the question I asked was, um, do you own? Oh, actually, I just asked it like this: Do you own or have easy access to a 3D printer? So, Aaron, in your comment, you said 3D printing is becoming much more common. I agree, it is more common. The results of that poll were 72% of people said no, they don't have access to it. 17% of people said yes, but I don't want to print core game components. And just under 10% said yes, and I would be open to printing core game components. So 10% of people said yes, they would be open to doing that. That was only 77 people out of the nearly 800 people who responded to the poll. So I'll go back to my original answer. I love people being creative with our games and creating cool things with the 3D printers or whatever they have access to, but it's not something that I think is widespread enough nearly at this point for us to integrate into our core process or our core expectations of customers. Yeah. Justo says, do you design your games more with a computer or pen and paper? Um, the brainstorming process and my note-taking process is definitely pencil and paper. But when I'm actually making the prototype, it is always on computer using InDesign. Yeah, that's because I think a lot about the user interface when I'm designing even the early prototypes of my games. Carol says, she's just coming into the conversation now. She says, have I looked at Darwin's Journey on Kickstarter? Indeed, yes. Yeah, I backed it within seconds almost of getting the notification that it was live. Yeah. Oh, Carol says that she also ordered this Claude book that I shared that my niece sent to me for our little FaceTime book club. She ordered it after seeing that on Instagram. I did post about that on Instagram today. Joey says, have I ever played a game from a different publisher and thought this could have been so much better, and then you continue to play it that way? It is pretty rare that I house rule a game, Joy, because it's I don't want to spend my design time redesigning a game that someone has already made. So it's often that I play a game and I either like it or I don't like it. There are a few house rules that I've tried, like one from this past year, Calico. Calico is a game that I really, really wanted to like. But in Calico, there are only 3 tiles available, face-up tiles, for all players to choose from when they draw a tile. And getting the right tiles in Calico is crucially important to getting even close to finishing some of the important goals in the game. It's a very tight game. I would almost say it's a very punishing game because of how hard it is to achieve those goals. And so we played the first time with 3 tiles, and we were like, how can you even possibly do well in this game with only 3 available tiles face up to see? So the next time we played 3 tiles per player. So we had 6 tiles face up. And it was a better experience. It still wasn't what I was hoping from the game, given the theme of the game of cats sitting on quilts. That's like the perfect game for me. But even with 6 tiles face up, it wasn't enough. But that is one example of a game where I did try a small adjustment because I really, really wanted to like and keep and play that game. But even then, it just didn't do it for me. So it is very rare that I do that. But I would say it is all the time that I learn from games. Things that I play a game and I'm like, okay, I really like the way they did that. I want to do something like that in my games. Or I feel like something is missing here. This is what I would do that I would have done differently, and that's kind of a reminder to me of something that I want to do in my games, something that I want to learn from that game to make sure I do or don't do in the games that we publish. Yeah. Julia says, did I end up backing ISS Vanguard? I didn't. I was really on the fence, but it is a lot more than I would typically pay for a game, and it's a weird thing where the ambition of the project, as much as I love that company, it's a wonderful company, Awaken Realms, but the ambition of it and the time commitment I think that would go into playing that game is more than I could reasonably commit to a game. It's very rare that we play campaign games these days because we want to play a lot of different games all the time. So for that reason, I didn't back it, but I will continue to be very curious about how it turns out. Yeah. Carol says, did you see that they're making a Slay the Spire board game? Yeah, I did see that announcement yesterday. Slay the Spire is one of my favorite games that I played from last year, but I didn't include it on any of my lists because it wasn't a 2020 release, and it is a digital game, not a tabletop game. But it is a rogue-like deck building game that is fantastic. It's a wonderful game, and I'm excited to see what they do with a cooperative board game version of it because the digital version is a solo game. It's not cooperative at all. Let's see. I started a little bit late though today, so I'll go a little bit long. I'll try to get through the questions here. John says he has a question about turn order and if you think a solidified turn order based on seat location and an initial dice roll is outdated. I'm designing a game and want to have a first to pass goes first next round, but I don't want to have that added complexity if need be. In your experience, is having one dice roll determine turn order for the whole game perceived negatively? It's a great question, John. I do have a video about this on YouTube about turn order. If you search for my YouTube channel, probably for the words turn order, you'll see this. For a long time, I thought that using seat order for a game was outdated, and that we needed better ways of doing it, like we do in Viticulture, like Terra Mystica does in the expansion. But I've come to realize that if you do have players taking sequential turns, it is the most intuitive just to do it clockwise. And if you don't do it that way, you often have players realizing that it's not their turn, or that another player has or hasn't finished their turn. I'm all about the flow of a game, about a game flowing well from one turn to the next very smoothly. And I think sequential turn order, just clockwise turn order, is probably the best way to do that. There are definitely exceptions to that. There are plenty of games that have simultaneous play. In Terra Mystica, where I think first player is a huge part of the game, I think that can really matter. Although you can have first player and also have sequential movement. Like in Lords of Waterdeep. You can choose to be the first player in Lords of Waterdeep, and then play proceeds clockwise from there. But yeah, I think clockwise play is probably the best bet in a lot of games. Instead of adding some fancy mechanism for turn order, clockwise play can be the most intuitive as you're actually playing and getting in the flow of the game. Tim says, are there any games non-Stillmeyer that you're excited about coming out this year? Yeah, let me mention a few of them. I posted about my favorite games of the year, both on YouTube and on my personal blog, jamiestegmeyer.com recently. And on my blog, I mentioned the ones that I'm really looking forward to this year. And those include Namiji, Time of Legends Destinies, Burger Brothers 2, Sleeping Gods, Role Player Adventures, The Whatnot Cabinet, Royal Visit, Momiji, Blabble, The Seventh Citadel, Dice Miner, The Age of Atlantis, Overlord, Hero, Merchants of the Dark Road, The Emerald Flame, Kemet, and Canvas. I'm sure there are many that I missed here. There are many of the games that won't be announced until later in the year that I'm sure I will be excited about. But those are the ones that I know about that I've either backed or that I'm just excited about because I know they're coming out that I'm excited about in 2021. Yeah. John says, thoughts on naming resources? Interesting question. Like naming different... I don't know if I have any thoughts about that. I'll just name them what they are. Yeah. Maybe I'm misunderstanding that question, though. Steven says, how big do you think the Wingspan Big Box has to be? Please formulate your answer in the form of a cow. Are we talking about stork, crow, condor? Like the wingspan of the actual box? Probably crow. Yeah, I'd say crow size in terms of the wingspan of the box. Let's see. Oh, George has an answer. I'm forgetting what the question was now. Okay. George says Panda's sessions. Panda, my manufacturer, they have these live sessions where they answer questions. You have to join via Crowdcast app or Facebook page and be aware when they stream, but they have other sessions like Pandemonium where you have to sign in early on because there are limited seats. I'm curious if they might put them on YouTube eventually because I think that would be great content to share on YouTube. Oh, Cody is awesome as usual. Cody has a video, some videos here answering some of the questions that I talked about a little bit earlier. Chad says, am I interested in getting the upgrade kit for Dune Imperium that replaces the wood components from minis? I don't think I need them. I love the game so much the way it is. I think it's a testament to how the mechanisms for the game can really outshine the need for really fancy components that would double the price of the game. I think Dune Imperium works just fine with wooden cubes. But if people are excited about it and want to get the fancy components, nothing against that too. I think they would be somewhat nice. The one downside is that on the board, the icons are cubes. And so you kind of have to remember if you have this miniature that cube equals miniature once you start playing with those minis. Tim says, what's a good score for Scythe? What's a good score for Scythe? I don't know. 100 is like a really great score for Scythe. I would say in the 80s is a good score. James says, where do you get your inspiration? Books, travel, life? How or when do you say this would make a great game? That's a great question, James. It happens all over the place. A lot of my inspiration comes from tabletop games that I play, or tabletop games or video games that I learn about via reviews or in-depth design discussions. I get thematic ideas from books, movies, TV shows. I read a lot. I watch a lot of movies. And so I definitely get ideas from those forms of fiction. Um, I would say also, even though I don't play a lot of video games, I do get ideas for themes from video games as well. As for how or when do I say this would make a great game, I don't know. I have ideas all the time that pop up when I play other games, when I read works of fiction, when I consume works of fiction. But at that point, it's just an idea. It's really the moment where I know this is going to be a great game is when I worked on the design, when I brainstormed it a lot, when I've actually play tested it quite a bit, and I had that moment where I'm like, oh wow, this I think could be a great game because it is currently a fun game based on something that I've actually created. That's kind of the key moment for me. It's more of the act of creation and execution than just having that initial spark. Patrick says, what game that you played for the first time last year surprised you the most in terms of design and gameplay? This could be one that I loved or didn't like. Um, I'll go with Dune Imperium, actually, because that is one that even after watching reviews of it, I was like, I don't quite see what makes this game special. And then I played it and I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. And it really surprised me in that way. So I would say Dune Imperium for that answer. Demetrius says, are there any plans for a digital edition of the Tuscany expansion? Um, and how about Scythe expansions? So these are all up to the digital developers. I actually just asked about that to the folks at Asmodee Digital today about what they're working on next for Scythe Digital. I hope they're going to incorporate the modular board and the Wind Gambit. And Scythe and Counter, I hope they incorporate all this stuff, but I don't know what they're working on next. And I think that Digidice is working on, at the very least, getting the Tuscany board into Viticulture Digital. But I know they're working on a different product for now, completely unrelated to us or Viticulture, and then they're going to focus on Tuscany. So they tell me. I don't know the exact timeline for that, but that's something for Digidice to reveal when they're ready for that. Let's see, a few more questions here, and then I've got to go for the day. Jamie says, a while back, you asked us to predict the future of how well certain games would sell. Did you find anyone that nailed it? Yeah, this was actually 2 years ago, the beginning of 2019 that I asked this, and no, no one nailed it. We were way off. Everybody was way off about their guesses. That was a poll I think I sent to ambassadors. Um, and I revealed the results. I believe, Jamie, if you can go back and find your ambassador e-newsletter from the December 2019, I think, was when I revealed those results, and we were just way off all across the board. And this is kind of me hoping that we would not have that happen, but also kind of proving the point that predicting demand and success of games based on limited information, based on like what those games are, is nearly impossible. And so I hope people in the industry understand that when a publisher prints too few of a game, or too many of a game, it's because they don't know how well the game will sell. Even if you put it on Kickstarter, you know your early adopters, but you don't know how if it will become an evergreen game after that, or if it will stop at the Kickstarter and you won't have any more sales of that game. It is really, really hard to tell. Looks like Dusty from the Mill is chiming in here as I go a little bit long on today's video. Cody's helping out with links as usual. Let's see, a few other questions that I'll call it. Dimitri says, do I own a collection? Does my collection still fit in a 4x4 Kallax shelf? No, no. I mean, I have my Kallax shelf over here. There are a few games stacked on top. I also have two other shelves. I have a game for like lighter filler games, party games, lighter games, and I have a shelf filled, well, not completely filled. I pared it down pretty well, but a shelf of games that I haven't played yet, that I own that I haven't played. But that shelf is actually doing pretty well. I think there are only maybe a dozen games on that shelf right now. That's my shelf of opportunity. Eric says, will the Birds book be available in French? I don't know, Eric. That's a great question for the publisher HarperCollins. I'm not sure about that. Giovanni says, how big is the Stonemeyer team? I'm currently a civil engineer, but would like to know how feasible it would be to work in a board game design company. Stonemeyer Games up until last year was just me, just one full-time employee. And over the last year, I did add two full-time employees, the director of communications, Joe, and a director of sales, Alex. And that is probably all the growth that we'll need for many, many years, I think. That is, I would say now we are somehow already a mid-sized board game company by adding those two people, because most board game companies are one or two people. They're very, very small. But if you do want to look at my blog, look at stonemeyergames.com and search for working at a board game company. Actually, if you scroll down, there's a couple articles about it, but I would say one of the first steps that you could take if you want to learn more about that is to pick a board game company that you really love and join their volunteer team and make a positive difference as a volunteer for that company. But having a full-time job at a board game company, I would say, is very difficult just because they often have very, very small teams. It's much more easier to work as an independent contractor to do one specific thing and do it really well for multiple board game companies. Julia says, how often do people send in game ideas or prototypes? Do you see them all? We're not interested in ideas at all. We're interested in execution. And so we do get game submissions all the time. We have a submission form on our website where people can submit games that they have fully designed and are interested in having us publish and they think are a good fit for Stonemeyer games. And that happens all the time. There are very few games that get past that stage, though. Very few games that we get submitted to us, we decide we want to learn more about this game. We actually want to get a prototype of this game because it is fairly time-consuming for us to learn the rules of a game and actually play through a prototype of the game, opposed to focusing on games that we already know that we're working on, the expansions that we already know that we're working on. So we have a lot of filters in place before we get to even seeing the prototype of a game. Christopher says, what's my favorite current book that you are currently reading? I'm currently reading Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. And I wouldn't say that I have a favorite book. I have a lot of favorite books by year. And actually, if you go to my personal blog, jamiesteinmeier.com, the post that I posted today, I'll post it below, lists my favorite books of 2020. I'll list that right when I end this chat, because otherwise the comment might disappear. Jamie says, is there a way to get old ambassador emails? Jamie, email me about that, and I will try to find that old email and forward it to you. I think there is a way to do it, but it takes a little bit of work on my part to find the old email. Annie says, one of my favorite unmatched characters. I've only played Cobble and Fog once. You might have to look at the video that I have about Unmatched for me to recall which character I like the most. Who did I like the most? I thought Invisible Man was probably the cleverest among them, but I don't remember my favorite. And I've only played those two characters from that. I don't even remember the two. Oh, actually, I really like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde because I like the choice to flip back and forth between the two of them. That was really cool. Okay, I've got to go in a second. I'm going to miss a few questions here, but feel free to chime in with your questions on the YouTube version of this video, which I'm going to post in a minute. It'll take a few minutes. And yeah, that'll be the best way for me to answer these remaining questions today. So I really appreciate you joining me for this conversation. This went a little long, but I love it. I love these questions. And here I will post a link to my favorite books of 2020 to end this conversation. So yeah, have a great day. I will see you next week. And if you have any other additional questions, again, go to the YouTube version of this in like 10, 15 minutes and post your questions there. Thanks. I'll see you later. Bye.